Hi, everyone. This is so exciting to be here with you today. I am Stephanie, and I am a member of the regional clubs team at the Yale Alumni Association. Here for Yale Alumni Live, we've taken a little bit of time off this summer, but we are back, and we are very excited today to be joined by two special guests. If you happen to catch Yale Alumni Live last week on Instagram at Yale Alumni, we had our YAA Echo Intern Amy Rodriguez join us for a special conversation with Dwayne Betts, who is an amazing Yalie who tells his story of going from jail to Yale. And he has a JD now, and he has amazing poetry. And Amy did an incredible job leading a conversation with him to share his story with the Yale community. And so I have her back with us today. So I'm going to bring her onto camera now. There she is. Hi,
Hello.
Amy. So everyone, meet Amy. Amy is our amazing intern that's been with me for the past couple of weeks. And Amy, if you could just tell everybody your story really quickly, kind of, where you're from and where you're headed and what you've been doing this summer, that would be great.
Of course. So, hi, everyone. I am a Hamden resident, not a New Haven resident, but I've been going to New Haven public schools since I was a child. So, New Haven is sort of like my second city or my home away from home. I am a recent graduate from Metropolitan Business Academy, and I am currently going to be a freshman during the fall semester at Eastern Connecticut State University, hopefully majoring in psychology, but we'll see if that changes. Not sure yet. And as far as this internship, I managed to get it by interning with Echo Perfect 10. It's a wonderful program ran by Mr. and Mrs. Laquette. Specifically, we do internships over the summer, but after school, we are taught certain skills and skill sets that we need when actually interning for either, an actual job or even taking it to the workplace where soon we'll be applying for careers that are more professional. So we learn how to do interviews similar to this, but also, get to talk about ourselves more and learn what we're interested in through that. So I managed to get the Yale Alumni Association internship, which I'm very happy I chose it. I do not regret it whatsoever.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that because we are certainly happy to have you. So just to set the stage for our Yale Alumni Live episode today, Amy and I were having a conversation early on, and I asked her to do some research about some cool trends happening in social media, things that we could do here on Yale Alumni Live, Yaleys that we could interview on special topics. And I said to Amy at one point, Amy, have you been impacted by any Yaleys in your life, whether it's at school or just around New Haven? And she immediately came back and said, well, my favorite teacher, Mrs. Blatteau, is a Yalie. And I said, perfect, let's talk to her and learn her story. And so we are very excited to be able to have Ms. Leslie Blatteau here with us today, who I'm going to bring on the camera in just a minute. But she's got an incredible story about teaching, but also some really interesting things that she's done right after her journey at Yale. So I think we'll bring her on and introduce her. Hello, Ms. Blatteau.
Hello. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Amy. So glad to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So like we did last week, I, handed it over to Amy to lead the conversation. So as we do in true Yale Alumni Live fashion, this is really a storytelling opportunity. So I'm going to remove myself from the camera and let Amy and Leslie have a conversation. And I hope you enjoy learning Leslie's Yale story. It's amazing. And it's really special to be able to highlight you, Leslie and Amy, because what I think is really special is when Yaleys stay in the New Haven community and have a direct impact on the students and the citizens. And this is a great example of that. So Amy, without further ado, over to you to share Leslie's Yale story.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Ms. Blatteau, as I formally know you, but yep. I believe if you're more comfortable with it, I'll call you Leslie for today's interview.
Comfortable. Let's go for it.
Okay. Thank you again for agreeing to do this. I was so excited. High school's a bit of like a fog for me right now. I don't remember much, but I do remember how outstanding the teachers were at Metro, especially you. So before we really start getting into the nitty-gritty, could you just share a little bit about your Yale experience?
Absolutely, yeah. So I came to Yale as, about to be 18-year-old in the fall of 93, which, I'm coming up on my 25th reunion next spring. So I, like many Yaleys, thought I was going to be pre-med and a biology major, and because I love the natural sciences, and then I got slammed by chemistry and organic chemistry. And I took on a sort of a whim, a history class, the history of the Darwinian Revolution. You had to fulfill requirements of different content areas. And I was interested in evolution and evolutionary biology. And then I really loved this class. It was history of science, history of medicine kind of subject area. And then the TA in the class told me that I was good at history. And I never even knew that you could be good at history at that point in my academic development. I just thought history was like the thing you did, remembering things and writing things down. But she told me I was good at it. So that seed got planted. And then I quickly shifted and went from climbing up Science Hill, as Yaleys who are listening know, riding your bike and climbing up Science Hill first thing in the morning became a thing of the past. And I shifted to history, a major, and theater minor. And really valued those experiences. I got to take classes with just extraordinary professors, an eminent labor historian, David Montgomery, who has since passed away. I got to take classes with him. I got to take classes with David Bryan Davis, a historian of slavery, just, leaders in the field. And I got to sit in their lectures and sit in their discussions. And that's some of the most memorable academic work. And some of the more memorable social things that I did were definitely being involved in theater, of course. The dramat plays on the bigger stage, and then smaller plays popping up in the little Trumbull box theater, different spaces like that. And then I really became much more politically involved as a Yale undergrad because there was a big strike when I was a student in 1996. And that really helped me so much learn more about and understand the relationship between Yale and New Haven, which is something that you have to be willing to reflect on and think about from a critical perspective, because it's, Yale's been here a long time. And New Haven has very significant needs, as you know, having been a student in New Haven public schools. So to learn about New Haven in the lens of that strike was really crucial for me as a young person developing my political identity and my identity as an activist.
Now, from someone who is not a New Haven native, was that your sort of aha moment that you would like to progress in New Haven public schools and stay there?
It was definitely the aha moment that I had more to learn in New Haven specifically, that I wasn't going to get my degree and move on somewhere else. I felt like I'm a Libra. I don't know if this impacts me.
I'm also a Libra.
Oh, I love this. Love this. I think this impacts our desire to sort of seek balance. And I felt like, having lived in New Haven as a Yalie on campus all 4 years, wrestling with, Stephanie too. Wrestling with, being a student and supporting the strike, but also recognizing just how complicated things were. I wasn't ready to leave and not kind of balance out the scales and live in this space as a non-Yalie. So I really wanted to live in New Haven, separate from my identity as a student and separate from my identity as being connected to the university. So I went back to Philly, I think for that summer 97 and maybe a little bit of the fall. Took a road trip out to visit a fellow Yale grad out in New Mexico, who's a theater maker out there, and then came back and moved in with some friends on Dwight Street, and really just was trying to figure out, okay, how can I live in this space not connected to Yale? And it took me a while to eventually make it back to New Haven public schools, to be honest. I was, having been a theater major, I'm definitely interested in the arts and in performance. And And being a history major and a political activist, I wanted to figure out ways to kind of bring political activism into the art that I was making. So during those early years of my early 20s, I was doing a lot of political punk rock music. I wrote plays and was performing and directing plays with the local theater group that I had started, Red Conception Theater. So I was really like embracing the arts education and the political education that I was so lucky to get at Yale, and really trying to take it to the streets and to public spaces as much as possible, because I think, you know, public art and public performance is just so necessary in this American democracy.
Wow. I mean, I stumbled across the New Haven Register article, so I did read a little bit about your past, but it made me very curious as to why teaching, because I find that if someone's well-versed in history and all the things that you're well-versed in, they could really branch out anywhere. But why teaching for you?
That's a good question. I've always, part of my identity has always been connecting with youth. So I was always a summer camp counselor. I was always a babysitter, you know, taking trips with families. And I'm sort of, I guess I identify as a childlike person, not childish, but childlike. And that I try to kind of embrace that aspect of my personality, even as I'm 45 years old. So I value and respect children and believe that we can learn so much from them. So that's always been part of my personality. And then, you know, rock and roll and playwriting, if you're not really getting paid to do it, is good for some time. But then at some point, mom was like, hey, Les, what are you doing? I got it. You know, shout out to mom for keeping me grounded. And so I got involved in New Haven Public Schools first as a substitute teacher, just to get a sense of, do I think this is the right place for me to begin? And the first place that I got sent as a substitute teacher was the Polly McCabe Center, which is a school that doesn't exist anymore, sadly. But it was a school created expressly for pregnant and parenting teens. So New Haven Public School students who were pregnant or parenting could transition to Polly McCabe and continue their education there. And it's, you know, I love New Haven because it's often the groundbreaker for doing things first. So back in the 60s, when young women got pregnant anywhere in the country, they most likely dropped out of school. They most likely had a distinctly different path than potentially even the father of the baby, right? Or other people who didn't become pregnant. But New Haven in the 1960s started Polly McCabe Center. And it was in the basement of St. Luke's Church on Whaley Avenue. And, you know, I just love New Haven for recognizing kind of the reality of people's lives and working to meet their needs. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to stay. But that was the place where I first got sent. And then from there, I became an outreach worker working with student parents. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. And I learned so much about the city. Listen to this, Amy. I did this job before smartphones, okay? And I had to do home visits. So I would get the form of the student whose house I'd had to visit, and you're not even going to know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to tell you anyway for the older folks on the live. I went and used to have maps in it, and I would use the index and find the street and find the map, and it sounds like I'm talking about ancient history. It was just the late 90s, early 2000s. So I really got to know the streets of New Haven. I really, you know, in this seeking of balance that I wanted, I was able to learn more about the city, learn more about the people who lived in it, and really tried to advocate for young people who were navigating parenting and high school at the same time, and support them to graduate high school and continue on with their work as parents and students. And then it was sort of like I'd done that for a while, and it was like, all right, what am I going to do? Do I want to be a social worker? I didn't think I wanted to be a social worker. And then lo and behold, I heard an NPR news story about a new program that Yale was starting, a master's degree program for people who wanted to become teachers. So like a 1-year certification master's degree, and then you commit to teach in New Haven after that. And it was a free funded program. So there I was. I had just bought a house in the Hill neighborhood. I was ready to transition to something else, and Yale created this program that I applied for and was lucky enough to get in. So I got really, really good training to become a teacher. And that was about 9-10 years after I'd finished my undergrad. So I had life experience, I had a desire, I had experience working in the schools, and then I got the training that I needed to become the teacher that I thought I wanted to be.
Wow. I mean, for me, knowing a little bit about the process of actually becoming a teacher and knowing the options that you're given, I find it very admirable that you went out of your way to go into these more urban facilities. Though, to be completely fair, these schools still have amazing teachers and lots of support. I do find that some teachers would prefer a more suburban area where there's a lot more money, to be frank. And in that sense, they can have a lot more resources for both the teachers and also the students. And for me, being raised in these urban facilities where I went to these schools, a lot of the textbooks were worn down and we didn't have as many resources. I got to see both sides of the table. I had some experience at Hopkins, which, strange enough, that's how I got to meet Reginald Dwayne Betts. But there, I realized things were quite different. And to me, that's where something sort of awoke in my heart. And I realized that there are disadvantages for kids, students who are in urban areas and in urban schools. But to circle back to you, why I find it so admirable that you went your way to choose, these schools in New Haven. You are such a resource, and you really go out of your way to teach your students thoroughly, which I've noticed not all teachers do that. Sometimes they just clock in and clock out and show us slideshows. But something that always stood out to me about your teaching is, and I can see how you use your performance skills while you teach. You both entertain, but also give your students a space to sort of control their thoughts. Even if sometimes we share out the things that students may say may be controversial, you correct them in such a way that it doesn't come off as offensive, but almost as if you're trying to show them a different direction, a different way of thinking. And it just inspired me so much, though I don't know what'll happen in a few years down the line. Maybe I will become a teacher, but I will always remember your way of teaching, but also your way of living day by day.
Oh, thank you, Amy. It means a lot to me that you say that. And I think my experience at Yale is being really a very privileged person as a Yale student, and then seeing what the union members were fighting for, members of Local 34 and 35. It was a similar disconnect as you're noticing of New Haven Public Schools and Hopkins. It was like, wait, this is injustice, and it's important to name it, and then use that to help form your values and then live by those values. So I don't think it should be an anomaly that Yale grads are working in public schools. I think that should be a norm. And I feel, like this sounds cliche, but it is true. I learn more from my students than I teach them. And I feel really lucky to be able to share space with New Haven public school students every day. So it's been really the best choice that I made was the choices to end up becoming a teacher and working with youth in New Haven.
Now, of course, with these past few years with COVID, what was sort of the catalyst for you, and how did you format how you were going to teach through digital learning?
Whew. Oh my word. I mean, you noticed from having had me as a teacher before COVID, that, I really, I can use a computer, but I really value the human experience, the time that we have to be together in a room. So that shift was very hard. It's just, my joke was I never was supposed to be an online teacher, and I was never supposed to be a stay-at-home mom. And then all of a sudden COVID had me, because I have a 5-year-old, all of a sudden COVID had me as a stay-at-home mom with my kid at home and an online teacher. And, I fight against the privatization of public schools, which is, sometimes associated with online learning. So it was really a bit of an identity crisis. But, it comes back to the thing that I think you sort of picked up on, which is listening to students. So I slowed down the pace of some of the curriculum. I really tried to hear you and your peers, how you expressed your needs of what you wanted in peer leadership class. I remember Bianca towards the end of the year mentioning she really wanted to try to make sense of the crisis in Israel and Palestine, right? That was happening right before our eyes. So I always try to listen to students and center student ideas in the way I design and lessons and teach. But I realized I had to do it more than ever because we were separated, right? And it just seemed like everything took longer with doing remote teaching during the peak pandemic. It's like, all those casual conversations that we can have on the way to lunch, or, as you're coming into TA for Miss Natalia and I'm leaving, or what have you, all those casual moments are no longer an option. So it's like, if I want to just check in on how Amy's doing, it's like, we have to book a Zoom, So those kind of realities made me realize all the more of just that human connection. And I'm sitting down now and thinking about how I'm going to plan my lessons for when we go back in a week and a half, and slower, more conversation, and just an opportunity for healing. Because if teachers don't acknowledge the trauma that our world has experienced, specifically our country, our city, then learning is not going to happen. We have to acknowledge it and really center healing as the goal. And then from there, the good learning and good student work will come. But I get very excited about the content, but then that voice inside my head reminds me to slow it down and more than ever, and really center healing, because it's not normal what we're witnessing right now with how much death and disease our country is experiencing. And to pretend that things are status quo is not fair to anybody. I will still teach the content that I have to, but I will do it through a lens of joy and healing, because I think that's what teenagers, that's what all people, but that's what teenagers need right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, backtracking to your punk rock days in a band, I was blown away. I thought to myself, I knew Miss Blatteau was cool. I just didn't know she was that cool. So could you talk more about your experience, especially touring to Estonia?
Yeah. So New Haven has a great underground music scene, especially, it does. I know more about it in the late 90s and early 2000s. So, played a lot of rock shows, was in feminist punk rock bands, played guitar and sang, and just had a really good time kind of expressing my political ideas, getting that performance energy out, getting that itch scratched, and being in community with people in New Haven in the music scene. And then some friends of mine, actually one of my favorite bands was this band Groovski. And they were some guys who moved from Poland to the United States when they were in high school. And they started kind of like a Polish new wave band. And we would play shows, my band and their band would play shows together, and we had a great time. And then one day, Adam, the lead singer and bassist of Groovski, came up to me and said, "You will be new guitarist in Groovski." And I was like, "Oh my God, whoa, wow." So sure enough, I started practicing with them. And, they were much more structured band than some of the bands that I was a part of. So, and I was definitely like the backing guitarist and vocalist, but we had a great time, and we really were a likable band. We played good music. I remember my dad being like, "Wow, this band is pretty good." It wasn't like the screaming punk rock, Riot Girl band that I had on the myself, which I still think is good. But don't get me wrong, You know what I mean? So we had a lot of shows. We played New York often, we played New Jersey often, and then we got an invite to play at this music festival in Tallinn, Estonia. And we replied back, yes, of course. And they said they would pay our way to go. And we were like, yes, we made it. And then they said, what bus are you getting? And we were like, what? They thought we were in Poland.
Oh, wow.
So we like sort of huddled up and we said, we're going anyway. We'll pay our own way. Like, you know, we have jobs. It's not like, you know, we had jobs. We could pay our own plane tickets. So we booked a whirlwind trip to the Baltics. And we said, could you get us one other show, maybe, just so we're not coming over for one show, you know, like a intercontinental flight for one rock show. So they got us another show in Riga, Latvia. So we arrived, got on a bus, went 6 hours to Riga, played a punk rock show in Riga, which was amazing, slept on someone's floor, went back to Tallinn. And then the festival in Tallinn was legit. Like, it was like many bands. We were the second to last band. And the audience was really excited to be like rocking out along to an American punk band. So it was, I mean, it's surreal to think back because it was so long ago. What, it was like 2005 we did that? So, you know, over 15 years ago. But I'm so glad I have those memories and pictures of it. And, you know, I just went to Block Island on Saturday with my buddy Adam from the band. So still have those friendships, you know. And it's, I feel so lucky that I've had these, you know, very rare opportunities to do wild and memorable things. Really good.
So I just have to jump back in and say that I think that now we're going to have to start like a Riot Girl band called the Libras, since we're all Libras, and it makes perfect sense.
And I miss my rock and roll days, Stephanie.
I mean, you're a teacher. You could teach us, right? Maybe we'll figure this out. I'm sure there's a lot of other Yaleys in music who would be interested in getting involved. It takes all kinds. So we've come to the end of our time together, and there's so many things that you guys touched upon. And I just want to share, Leslie, with you. And I told Amy this story as we were preparing for our conversation with you. I was speaking with another Yaley, Annette Clapsettle, who is a teacher down in the for the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina. And she told us a story on Yale Alumni Live when she came to Yale and she was touring the campus. And she told someone who she came across that she was going to come to Yale and she wanted to learn how to be a teacher. And that person looked at her and said, why would you go to Yale and become a teacher? And her response was, why wouldn't I go to Yale and become a teacher? And I feel like so many themes along those same lines have come out in your conversation today. And we are so grateful to the teachers across our country this year, every year, but this year, the past year, it's been an incredible feat what you all have had to do. And I think slowing things down is the theme for sure. And
Yes.
Amy has taught me that, because as a bubbly Libra, sometimes I go a little too fast. And I have benefited from meeting her and watching her style on Yale Alumni Live. And I'm just so grateful to both of you for being here with us and sharing your stories and how your lives came together in New Haven. So it's been a real pleasure. Leslie, I hope to see you around. And Amy, you're amazing. I'm sure everyone agrees.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, I wish you the best, Amy. Good luck and keep in touch. I know you will.
Of course I will.
Okay. Well done.
Thank you all so much for watching. We will be back with Yale Alumni Live throughout the rest of the fall. We had a big announcement today that the Yale Harvard game is happening in New Haven in November. Tickets are available. So we're going to be coming back with pep rally and all kinds of things. So stay tuned, everybody. And thank you to Amy and Leslie. It's been great talking with you guys today.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Bye.